All right, today we're going to go through amphibians and birds. They're not overly long bits of notes here. I just want to get those covered before we forget. But first off, we'll talk about amphibians. Okay, amphibians, obviously meaning living two lives or living in both ways of life. Most of them will be born in water. Okay, tadpole, for example. And then as it matures into an adult, it will eventually move onto land to live. Okay, through a process called metamorphosis. Okay, where they mature. They've got moist, thick skin. Again, thick skin, much like we saw with the worm. Thin skin. It's going to be just like the worm, used for a lot of their gas exchange. They've got webbed feet. And then, again, along the lines of gas exchange, they have gills when they're young and premature, and then lungs as they grow into terrestrial beings. But they also, like I said, use their skin that is thin, and it's always usually moist because it's easily, the water and oxygen can move across it easily and help them breathe. Water is required for reproduction for the most part. Usually it's going to be through external fertilization, although some can carry eggs. Very, very few carry embryos, living ones inside of them, but they're all going to be requiring some form of water in order to reproduce. Okay, and due to that, they're very susceptible to water and air pollution. Okay, obviously air pollution, everything's susceptible to it, but in the water, because they start out most of their premature lives, okay, in water, they will be very susceptible to water pollution. Okay, so in terms of their respiration, okay, when they are larvae just simply meaning their premature phase. So if you think of the frog tadpole situation, the tadpole, they'll breathe through their skin and their gills. Okay, this is the stage, the larvae stage, where they are living predominantly in water right now, swimming around. So they still have that thin, moist skin that is able to do gas exchange across the membrane, but they'll also have gills. Okay, then as they mature into adults and move on to terrestrial environments or land, then they eventually end up with lungs. Okay, now they still have that moist, thin skin so that they can use water to get across their membrane and to kind of breathe that way, but they're also going to have lungs at this point in time. Okay, and then they have what's called positive pressure breathing. Okay, positive pressure breathing means that the air intake, or whatever they're breathing in, is more than what they're breathing out. Okay, hence they're ending up with a positive pressure on the inside because they've got more inside than they're releasing. Okay, so they're bringing in more than they're releasing out. Okay, that's what positive pressure breathing is, and they're able to get that through their lungs and skin combination. Okay, so here's an example, okay, of some different circulatory systems through vertebrates. Okay, the one all the way to the left here, okay, that's the one we are just getting done covering, the fish. Okay, two chambers, pretty much all moving one way. Okay, now, if you go all the way to the right quickly, okay, that would be similar to humans, birds, okay, and all the rest of our mammals. Okay, so that's the difference between fish and mammals as we are. Okay, so the fish have gills. Okay, they've got gill circulation, systemic inside their system circulation. Okay, and then they have their aorta. Okay, and it's pretty much constantly flowing in a clockwise manner in accordance with this picture. Now, when you contrast that with the human or the mammal or the bird, okay, when they have four, okay, it's still for the most part moving one direction, okay, but it's separated out now, okay? So if you're following us, okay, we've got this long chain now, and that makes it a lot more efficient, okay? What you're able to do is keep more of your blood oxygenated, okay, and it's a lot quicker system. It's a lot more efficient system. Okay, now with amphibians, okay, the reason that we did them last, some reptiles have this, but mostly amphibians, is they have a three-chambered heart. Okay, now this purple line here, okay, that's mixed blood. It's a mixture of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Okay, so they still have their capillaries here, and they feed into the veins. Okay, the veins would be blue. They come into the heart, and then the oxygenated blood coming out from here is coming into the heart, but then they have this mixture blood going in both directions to the capillaries. Okay, so that's the main difference. Whereas we as mammals, we have separate different vessels taking blood to and from our heart and to and from our capillaries. Amphibians actually have one that serves us both, and it's two-way traffic to some degree. Okay, so that's the main difference, okay, with amphibians versus everything else. Okay, even though the fish only have really two chambers, and the idea of you've got aorta, okay, there are your veins, and then you've got your other blood vessels going the other way, your arteries. Okay, the only real difference between those two and our two is that we have more tubes. Okay, we have more pathways, making it more efficient and faster. Also, think about it: birds and mammals, not necessarily birds, but mammals, we're bigger bigger beings, so we need to have a little bit more efficient circulatory systems. And birds expend a lot of energy because they have to be, flying from, I don't know, hundreds of feet up in the air, and they have to be doing a lot more. So they have a much more efficient circulatory system as well. Fish, they're usually smaller, okay, but because they don't necessarily need that as much, they don't have as efficient energy capabilities or circulatory systems for their energy. Okay, and then the amphibians have that mixture of both. Now, the big difference between these, if you look at the top here, fish only have gills, birds and mammals have lungs, but this is also mixed because the amphibian is getting some of their oxygen from their lungs or gills if they're a tadpole, and some from their skin. So because they're getting it from multiple places, that's why they have to have multiple ways to get blood everywhere, because it's not just like us where it's capillaries, heart, extremities, capillaries, heart, extremities. Theirs is coming in from the extremities along with their capillaries. So that's the main difference between our three different circulatory systems that we're seeing between all of our vertebrates here. Okay, when we get into a digestive system now, okay, the digestive system, okay, of the amphibians, they have a complete digestive tract: mouth, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestines. Okay, they also have a pancreas and a liver. Those ones aren't always the necessary. You're considered to have a complete digestive tract without those two, but they do have those as well as the other things to aid with their digestion. Okay, this is just real quickly a look at the journey from egg to frog. Okay, so egg develops a little tail bud, okay, and then a tadpole that has some external gills on the outside of its body. Then by day 9, those gills are now internal or internalized. Then they develop an operculum. Then they develop hind limbs, forelimbs, and then by day 84, they have that what's called metamorphosis, where they develop from their premature phase of life into their adult phase of life. Okay, so that would be the idea that they would move onto terrestrial environments, okay, onto land, okay, once they reach that day 84 in this picture. And then from there on, they would be known as a young frog. Okay, and moving into birds now. Okay, birds are very closely resembled to reptiles. Okay, they've got scaly feet. We've talked about this way back in our evolution unit, as that was one of the ideas, was that some of the dinosaurs that were reptiles developed from there into birds. Okay, if you remember Archaeopteryx when we discussed it, that was our kind of example we used. Okay, but the feathers provided a better advantage than skin for the wings. Okay, they're lighter, they got that lift, and they can actually catch some of the air. Okay, they can be replaced. Obviously, they can lose feathers and then regrow new ones. They have amniotic eggs, simply meaning eggs that have amniotic fluid in there. And then they've got large pecs and breast muscles, okay, approximately 30% of their body weight. Okay, that's important because if you're thinking about it, they have to be able to flap their wings and to fly, and that puts a lot of strain and pressure on those breast muscles and on the pecs. Okay, so that's why birds are going to have extremely large pecs. Okay, and then they've got a flight skeleton is what it's known as. Okay, but essentially it's a skeleton that's thin and hollow. Okay, most of our bones are not hollow. Okay, our bones are very, very heavy. Okay, but bird bones are thin and they're hollow, allowing them to be lighter while they still hold a structure. So think of them as like a metal pipe or PVC pipe. Okay, where there's nothing on the inside of it, but it's still a strong material that can hold up the rest of their body. Okay, they also have a lot of fused bones. Okay, so if you think of our hand, Okay, our hand, obviously, you can bend your fingers and all that stuff because they're all separate bones connected by cartilage. With a bird, those are all fused together. Okay, and you'll see that when we look at an actual picture of a skeleton, but they've got their bones are all fused together into one. Again, it's just a way to make their bones more efficient, and then to not need as much connective material, because all that adds up to weight. And if you're going to be flying, you don't want to weigh more because it's harder to fly then. The last thing they have is a keel bone. Okay, and that's a little bit of an extension to the sternum. If you know where your sternum is, that covers right over top of your heart, dead center of your chest. And that keel bone is what's going to attach to their wings. Okay, so it's almost like if you think of your sternum, if it had a clip-on, and then your clip-on, like if you think of something that holds guitar strings down, a little clip-on that's going to connect to the wings and just to give the wings a place to attach so that they can utilize those pectoral muscles. That would be your keel bone. Okay, a couple more. We've talked multiple times about the beak structures from evolution all the way back to the ecology unit first semester, but their beak structure is indicative of their food source. Okay, they don't have teeth. Okay, whatever they eat because of their beak. Okay, so that's what's going to end up determining what they eat. They also have a crop and a gizzard, very similar to our earthworm. Okay, we'll take a look at that as well when we cut open our pigeon. And like we talked about a few slides ago, they have very efficient respiration and circulation. Okay, 4-chambered heart. And they need to have that because, again, if you're flying, you can't really stop flying. You can't just curl up and take a break because you would, fall and die. So that's why they've got to have very efficient respiration and circulation. Obviously, they can glide in some of that. But even if you just think of holding your arms as wide open as you can, and then having loads of pressure being put on them from wind resistance, that still would end up being a workout, even though they're not constantly flapping them. So they've got to have this efficient respiration and circulation in order to do that. Okay, just an example. I know we've looked at this picture before in our other units, but just the beaks here, the difference in beaks and what they would eat. Obviously, you look at our eagle here, it's got that extra hook so that it can stab and kind of cut a little bit with that and eat prey. We've got something here that would be a little bit smaller, use it to maybe break open some nuts there with a point or dig into a hole into a tree. Another one here similar to that with some insects. The little pelican toucan deals here. They've got that fruit type one where it's a little curved and a little wide, little thicker, I guess maybe not wider, where they could try and cut some fruit and be able to cut it up a little bit more rather than just eating it whole. So again, that would determine what they would eat as a food source. Okay, last couple different things here. We've got a couple more slides of the birds, just because they've got some neat characteristics. Their external nares, again, nares are what they use, nares nose, okay, for their sense of smell. And their cere is just a little skin covering that the nare is on. Okay, so that's what we're looking at right here. Okay. Now, the nictitating membrane, okay, you can also see it here by that little arrow. Sorry, on the other side there. They can have it on the top of their beak there where their nares are. Okay, so right in here. Sorry, that's not the external nare. It's up here. You can kind of see it there, and that's what the arrow's pointing to. My bad, I got mixed up there on those. Okay, the nictitating membrane, okay, is actually a layer on the inner eyelid. Okay, and I know we've talked about this as well, but that's what keeps the eye able to stay open while they're moving fast and keep it moist when they're diving for prey, say, or they're flying fast up in the air. Okay, it's just that little extra eyelid that allows them to keep their eyes open, keep their eyes moist, even in situations where us as humans, if you were to think about riding a motorcycle without a shield and without a mask, and try to keep your eyes open, it'd be very hard because your eyes would dry out. This is what they have that allow them to do that kind of stuff without needing to close their eyes a whole bunch. Okay, and then they do have a tympanic membrane inside their head that allows them to hear, scaly skin on their feet and claws. Okay, so just a few more of their defining characteristics. And then I'm sure we've kind of all heard or seen something similar to this, but their eyes, they're pretty big for this comparatively to the size of their head. They do see in color. And if you've ever heard that idea, if the eyes are on the front, it's time to hunt. If the eyes are on the side, run away and hide. So eyes on the front of the face gives their depth perception a little bit better than on the side, and they're able to or they're usually predatory birds. If the eyes are on the side of their head, gives it a wider range of vision, but they're seen in prey animals. Okay, so that's how I always learned it. Eyes on the front, they hunt. Eyes on the side, they hide. But however you can remember that, easy way to do it. Okay, now a couple of their different variations of feet. Again, it's very similar kind of to what their beaks are, except for these are more how they move. Okay, so four toes, would be a perching bird. Okay, if you were to think here, it's got 3 fingers on one side and then that almost the opposable thumb idea. Okay, but that's so that it can grab and latch on to a perch. Okay, 4 toes, if you're thinking of an owl, parrot, or a cuckoo, 2 each way, still similar, okay, in the fact that they can grab onto things, okay, but not as strong of a grip, I guess, as this one. Okay, if you're jacana, okay, that's more of a, I can't think of what it's called, a rainforesty type bird, tropical bird, there we go, tropical. Narrow toes, okay, and these are the ones that would like to walk on some of those water plants, okay, the lily leaves. Okay, gull, the webbed feet, those are ones that they can use to swim. Same idea here with the goose, okay, and the grave. Okay, these ones obviously have that extra skin there because they can use them so that they're able to swim a little bit more. Okay, so then just some different information here about how all the different foot structures of the birds can deal with how they're able to move as well as what environments they may live in. Okay, this is just a look at a cross-section of a feather. Okay, you can kind of see the patterns. Okay, you've got the long shaft, the barbs that extend off the shaft, and then the barbules that go in between the barbs. Okay, and all those together, again, they're light, but they are able to catch the wind, okay, especially if you have a clump of these together. Okay, so that's a cross-section of right there on that overall feather. Okay, then as you're looking here, this just gives you a look at their bones, so that coracoid, humerus, radius, ulna, radial, ulnar, metacarpus. Okay, the metacarpus, ulnar, those ones are fused bones. Okay, so the metacarpus, that's like our metacarpals. Okay, our part of our hand there. Okay, but that's a lot of these are the ones that are fused together just to make them easier and lighter. Okay, remember all these are hollow and relatively thin. Okay, and then we've got the different feathers. Okay, your primary feathers, secondary and tertial feathers. Okay, all right here. Okay, the blade of the scapula extends right here, so that's that shoulder blade right there, giving you an idea of where that would be on a bird. Okay, 4-chambered heart, pretty simple. You've probably seen a picture similar to this before. Pretty much covered in our slide about circulatory systems. And then here you go. Here is our bone structure again, much like we'd kind of shown before. Okay, but we've got the scapula there, our clavicle. Okay, what's our clavicle there? That's our collarbone area. Okay, the interclavicle coming down to the sternum there, and then you've got your ribs across. And then you can see on the back here, the synsacrum and the pygostyle. A lot of these ones are fused in certain ways, or some parts of them are fused together. Just because that does allow them better capabilities to fly. Sorry, I kind of screwed up the picture there. But those are our notes over amphibians and birds. Hopefully you were able to get something out of that that's good and helpful for our dissections of them coming up. If you've got any questions and I'm not around, you feel free to email me. And thank you for listening.